ever played with Kiss with their makeup off in 1983 in Lisbon, Portugal. So at the time, I don't think we considered South America. Most of our sales down there were bootlegs. So we really didn't have a firm grasp on how popular we were in Brazil or South America in general. Although we used to hear back from people that, Rock, you got tons of airplay and video stations and that.
We are here. We are back, actually. I am back at the Alma Hard canal. I'm Silvia, and we are together today with Leandro and Brian Vollmer, the prime vocalist from Helix. So we are starting with the new. Do we have any tours and albums coming up?
We're working on some stuff right now. We're always working on new music. I don't know how many albums it is now, probably 20 something.
But 27 is like an entire life. It's so many kids. Like, do you feel like your albums are such as your children or something new?
You're saying having albums is like having kids? Yeah, I guess kind of. Each song you write the song and then it goes off into the world, you know. And sometimes other bands record the songs, but you know, each record that I put out is a statement of where I'm at in my life at that point, and so they're all different. You have to write for yourself, and hopefully the fans will like it. I don't think you can write music with other people in mind. You have to write it for yourself. Because if you don't like it, then nobody else is going to like it.
Brian, what does it feel like to get here after all those 50 years of music, being the only original member of the Helix?
Well, we're still having fun. We're still making money. We're out there, especially in Canada. But we just played down in Chicago. We played out in Western Canada in Edmonton. I think we're coming to the city of Calgary pretty soon in August, and then we have some acoustic dates. So we're always playing. It's a blessing to be here 50 years later. Luckily, my voice is still in good shape because I learned how to sing properly using bel canto, bel voce, which in Italian means beautiful voice. The technique was started by Leonardo da Vinci.
Yes, and this year we lost Greg Fritz Hans. It's not easy to see our friends going, right? What did you feel? They passed away, the Greg Fritz, in this year.
Well, we've lost a few members now. Paul died back in the 90s in the car crash, and now Fritz passed away. Fritz died of cancer. He realized he had cancer after our date in Ottawa at the Hard Rock Casino, but he kept it under wraps for most of the year. So that was difficult, not being able to tell anybody that he had cancer. It's always hard when you lose a friend that you spent most of your life with. I've spent more years with Fritz than I did with my own blood brother. And I told my own brother that. And people don't realize, but when you're in a bunk, you know, this far away from the next guy for years and years and years and years, you can't really put down into words what it feels like, the closeness between you after all those years. At the same time, I realize we're all getting older, and there's quite a few of my friends have been passing away lately.
I hope that you guys still on for lots more years. I'm sorry.
100 years at least.
Yeah. So we can see you in Brazil as soon as possible. So in Brazil, we had two Helix albums released in the 80s by the Capitol Records. The Walking on the Razor's Edge and Long Way to Heaven. Was Brazil ever in Helix plans for a tour?
But in the time, Brian, in the time that the great companies, record companies, they look to Brazil, to a market, to bring a tour of Helix, or no? Just the focus are only the United States or the Europe?
Well, at the time, we were spread kind of thin. We were playing in all across Canada, and then we were trying to break into the United States. We were already were playing in Europe. In 1983, we played with Kiss all across Europe. We were the first band ever played with Kiss with their makeup off in 1983 in Lisbon, Portugal. So at the time, I don't think we considered South America. Most of our sales down there were bootlegs. So we really didn't have a firm grasp on how popular we were in Brazil or South America in general. Although we used to hear back from people that Rock U got tons of airplay and video stations and that. I don't ever remember a promoter coming to us except when we played in Trinidad, and that was about 1988.
Really?
It's not up to us to go find a tour. It's for promoters to go hire us. Well, we heard from, we always had our ear to the grape, to the ground as far as listening to our fans, and our fans were telling us we were getting a lot of airplay in South America and video play, but we couldn't ever really prove that. I asked Capital EMI several times about sales in other territories like Japan. That I would hear that there was record selling, but I would never really get an answer. But at the time, we were already playing many territories and already playing like, I think we had 1 week off a year or something. So I don't know, where do you fit in South America in that schedule?
Oh, so let's start talking about the beginning of the Helix. The band starts in the 70s under another name. How did the Helix start as a band in the 70s, Brian?
Well, I was just out of high school, and I went to work in a meat packing plant in Kitchener, Ontario, and I had met these other guys through a local Battle of the Bands contest at it's called the Central Ontario Exhibition in Kitchener, Ontario, and I met these other guys, and so I moved from where I was, which was a place called Listowel, Ontario, and I lived on a farm, and I moved into Kitchener and lived with my grandmother and worked at the meatpacking plant, and I started practicing with these other guys, and we call ourselves the Helix Field Band. And then once we got our management under Bill Sipe, he got us to shorten the name to Helix, and then we went on the road. Back then it meant playing 6-7 nights a week, 3 to 5 sets a night. You started off, at least here in Canada, you'd play locally around Southern Ontario, around Toronto, and then they'd send you up north to places like Kapuskasing, the third coldest city in the world, and we'd freeze our asses off. They were awful gigs, and many a time we had to fight our way out using our fists. We'd have beer bottles thrown at us and all sorts of projectiles. Kind of like in the Blues Brothers, or in that place with the chicken wire. Kind of like that.
So I bet that it all worth it, right?
Well, life's worth it. I tell my students, because I teach now, and I talk to a lot of young musicians getting into the business, that life is for living. Depends what you want in life. If your focus is money, you'll probably make a lot of money. In our case, my focus when I got into music was to make music. I was a young guy, and it was my way of meeting girls and just being more popular. And I love music, and I really didn't think too much more about it than that. I just kind of went where my desires led me. But years later, looking back at it, I think that everything in life is a choice. and that you can go to a 9-to-5 job and you're done at the end of the day and you go home. You don't have to worry about your job, or you can do something, do your own thing, and the more work you put into it, the more you get out of it. In the case of the music industry, that's what it was for me. We went on the road. I quit my job at the meatpacking plant where I was making very good money, by the way, back in 1976, and went on the road and sold my new car. I had a brand new Honda Civic. I sold it, and I never had another new car for 26 years. And so I tell everybody that's how lucrative the music business is. But what a life. One of the first things I did when I sold my car was we were the band for Del Shannon, the Del Shannon. And I picked him up at Pearson International Airport, my $25 Ford Galaxy with a V8 engine and Bondo red fenders on in the middle of summertime, and snow tires. And over the years, I've met some of the most famous people in rock and roll, from Kiss to Alice Cooper to Motorhead and Lemmy. I've toured with them all. I've known them all. I broke bread with them all. So that's what life's about. It's not necessarily money, although if you become good at your craft, and that's what this is called, it's called developing a craft. If you become good at your craft, as you get older, people will pay you very, very good money to buy your services. And that's all that's happened to us over the years. You know, we used to play 300 dates for hardly any money, and now we play maybe, 10, 15 times a year for a lot of money. And that's all the money I need.
So I believe you have hundreds of curious stories in your career, as you're talking that you met Alice Cooper and the guys from Kiss. But could you tell us about the specific of them?
The best times in my career? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Well, there have been many, and it hasn't necessarily been the big gig or whatever, right? Some of my best memories are when we played the bars back in the 80s, and we'd have packed houses, and it was just craziness in the bar scene, and friends there that you knew were coming out to see you, and those were marvelous times, traveling across the country, seeing Canada from the driver's window of my car. And ironically, I still love driving. We played Chicago a couple of weeks ago, and I personally, I drove the van 10 hours down, 12 hours back, not because we couldn't fly, but because I like driving. And then I drove, up to Toronto when we went up to Edmonton. And then once we got back home, then I drove up to Ottawa, which is about an 8-hour drive from here, and visited my daughter, son-in-law, and grandkids. So I like driving. But highlights in my career, I don't know. There's been many. I met Richard Pryor, Robin Williams, a lot of hockey players. But also met a lot of nice fans. Have a lot of stories about those fans, some of the things they've done. Meeting my wife would probably be a big moment in my career. I met Linda over in England. She worked at the Hard Rock Cafe. She had a room down Shepherd's Bush, where the BBC, just down from the BBC, and she rented her one room in her flat to Neil Murray from Whitesnake. And anyway, I met my wife, and in England, that was on the Wild in the Streets album. That was a high point.
Silvia said about the Michael J. Fox, because he said in the interview that he made a test to win in the Helix. It's real, or it's a fake?
Well, he said he auditioned for Helix on, it was like some late night show, and that's true. But was it this Helix? There was a Helix in British Columbia where he's from, so it might have been that Helix. that Helix was a jazz band or something. So I don't know.
And Brian, the Helix trilogy that I consider as a killer is a Walking the Razor's Edge, Long Way to Heaven, and Wild in the Streets. They are 3 albums that are listened to non-stop. Don't skip any track in the album. What was like the creating those work of arts? What was the band commercial peak? How was that period of time that you created these 3 fabulous albums?
Well, first off, I don't think we thought it was works of arts when we were doing them. We were just trying to write good songs on the road. The first album, The Rest of the Wicked, we were out playing across Canada. So a lot of those songs were actually written in a very short period of time. I'm talking like a month. We were just spitting out songs. We were writing 2-3 songs a week. And the reason I mention that is because previous to when we got in that little writing groove, we had written like 100 songs that were shit. And we were kind of searching for our sound at that point of our career. And then suddenly we started to nail it. And Paul Hackman, my writing partner, and Brent Derner, also a writing partner, we were just coming up with songs. And also Mike Giselak of the No Rest of the Wicked album. And then as time went on, it became more Paul Hackman and myself, and then Paul was killed in the accident in 1990. So that when you have that kind of a writing relationship and you have a sound to your writing, it's very difficult to find another writing partner like that. It's not like you can go down to the music store and buy another writing partner. So I was heavily criticized after that. Hey, you guys sound different. Well, yeah, half of us isn't here anymore. But those albums, when we wrote them, when we wrote No Rest of the Wicked, like I said, we were just spitting out songs. But as we gained more success, we also attracted a lot of stress from our management, from the record company, to come up with more and more, shall we say, radio-friendly songs. And so we had never really sat down and said, okay, we're going to write a song like this. That wasn't the way we wrote songs. In fact, when we wrote Heavy Metal Love, which is arguably the biggest song of the band's career, went to heavy rotation on MTV. We wrote it in a hotel room in Seaforth, Ontario, a little farming community town. And we definitely weren't thinking of, whatever. We're just trying to write a little song that would go over in the bar. And when we started to get pressure to write a certain way, because Rock You became a hit, I think that got our heads in the wrong place. Kind of like a person on a sports team going up and the coach has just screwed their head up before they hit the field. And that's how we felt as writers. We started to get a writer's block, and it wasn't a nice time at times, if you get my drift. But in the end, it forced me to actually become a better writer, because I think that I discovered how to write and be relaxed and just go into a writing session with whomever. Nowadays, it's Sean Kelly, who plays with Lear and all sorts of bands, right? But when I sit down with Sean, it's very relaxed. We're there to have fun. And if something doesn't come out of that writing session, that's okay too, right? But mostly when we sit down, we'll come up with 3 or 4 different ideas. I believe that when you write, you are not the instigator of creativity. Creativity flows through you. You are like a lightning rod. You know what that means? Lightning rod?
Yeah.
And so, when you sit down and relax, you're a better lightning rod than when you're all uptight and going, I want to write a song because I want to be a star. I don't think those are the right reasons. The universe gives you songs. It's a gift. So I don't think the universe gives you songs because you want them for the wrong reasons. That's just my personal belief. Anyway, talked enough about it.
In some interview, you said that the hit "Rock You" you co-wrote with Bob Halligan. You correct some parts of the lyric, but you not credited. Why?
Well, at the time that song was presented to us, it was brought to us by Barry Bergman was Bob Halligan's manager, and essentially, Barry Bergman said to my manager, he said, if he wants credit for anything in that song, we'll take it somewhere else because we think the song's a hit, verse lyrics or no verse lyrics. So we wanted the song, so we just stepped aside. We didn't take credit. Simple as that. It happens all the time. You know how many writers, you know how many guys out there, I won't mention names, but big artists that slap their names on songs by other people, and you know what I mean?
Yes, I know.
But in this case, I'm friends with Bob Halligan. Bob's been good with me. The song, without the song, we might not have a career, right? So I can't complain about Rock You. But that was the case. I kind of would have liked to see my name on that song. I didn't really care about the money. I cared about my credit as a songwriter. That meant a lot more to me than any money that I would have gotten.
It's a shame about it because it really feels that our work worth it to be with our name in something that it's getting bigger, right?
In the end of the 80s, Brian, you went through several difficulties in the end of the 80s, yeah?
We went through what?
Several difficulties, problems.
Difficult.
Yeah, difficult. Yeah, it's a difficult time for you, yeah?
Yeah, I understand that, okay.
And what we want to know, what made you have the strength, the power to start from the zero, became the Helix from the zero in the 90s?
Well, I didn't really know how to do anything else. I wasn't good at anything else. And I just spent, by the time I reached the 90s, I joined the band in 1974. So by that time, I'd already been in, what is that, like over 16 years? And people thought I should start all over. I went, hey, I'm not just going to toss that name out the window that I spent 16 years trying to develop. If I do that, I am going to start all over again. So I kept the name, and by this time we didn't have a record deal, so I had to put all my own money up. So Linda and I had just gotten married. Linda was my second wife, and we scrimped and saved, and a lot of those albums I put together for $15,000, like Rockin' My Outer Space and B-sides and whatever. When Pigs Fly, my solo album, and so little by little, I learned how to do my own records and how to sell my own records. And then finally on The Power of Rock and Roll, we were signed to Sanctuary, and we got an advance on that album. And then they bought a lot of those albums I'd been doing before, but before they paid me for them, but before they ever came out, Sanctuary went bankrupt. But the money I got out of that deal, after I paid everybody else, I bought a house up the street, and I got into real estate, and that's where I made my money.
We're talking about the 90s. The albums Back for Another Taste and It's Business Doing Pleasure are awesome albums, but the two albums are different from each other. It sounds different, both. What's the reason for this difference of the music in the style, that albums?
Between that and Business Doing Pleasure?
Yes, between Back for Another Taste is similar to the Helix was made in the 80s, but It's Business Doing Pleasure is a little bit different. Why that difference?
Well, it was a huge difference because it was never meant to be a Helix album. Paul and I wrote the Back for Another Taste album, and then Paul was killed before we wrote the next album. So I had been writing with Mark Ribler. Mark Ribler was who I wrote with when we came up with Good to the Last Drop. That was a song I wrote with Mark Ribler down in Brooklyn, New York. And when Paul died, I had been writing with Mark Ribler to write a solo album. and Paul was killed in the car accident. And my manager came to me and said, well, you know, Paul's dead now, and maybe we should make this a Helix song. And I don't know. They're pretty different. And he talked me into it, and to this day, I don't think that was a good idea. I just re-released it, actually. It's funny you brought that album up because I just re-released it on vinyl, and I've changed the title. It's now called It's a Pleasure Doing Business. I changed the title around. I took 2 songs off, added 2 songs, and released it on vinyl, and it's released under the Vollmer name instead of Helix, which it should have been in the first place.
Oh, yes.
I knew it wasn't a Helix album. It was never meant to be a Helix album. And it pissed me off because I was really proud of those songs I wrote for that album. By the way, Mark Ribbler nowadays is the music director for Little Steven from Bruce Springsteen's band. That's who I wrote that album with. Great writer, great guitar player. And, you know, the album came out in Aquarius, and it kind of went, yes, because people went, what the hell's this? This ain't Helix. But Lee Aaron was on that album, so was Kim Mitchell. Really good musicians.
Yes, it's a really good album.
Yeah, that was why there's such a big difference in sound.
Yes.
So the band had a gap of almost 10 years. You even released your first solo album, and almost 20 years later, you release another, the Get Your Hands Dirty. What these albums mean different from Helix? Does it have any concept?
No, not any concept. I just write songs. In fact, right now, like there's almost enough for an album, but really the songs are like little individual statements that have happened over the last couple of years because we keep getting interrupted by hurricanes and COVID and geez, everything. So, for instance, we have Not My Circus, Not My Clowns, which is a song we wrote during COVID. The title's kind of self-explanatory. But we've also written, for instance, I got a song I just wrote with Stet Howland, who played with the Metal Church, Lita Ford, when I was down in Florida. And so we're just recording that song. So songs come from everywhere nowadays. I'm writing songs with Sean Kelly and with my own band, of course. So each song is kind of a statement of some sort or another.
So they are different thoughts, right?
They're all different, yeah.
You released one of the best acoustic albums ever, the Smash Hits Unplugged. What was the idea of bringing these classics in this format?
I think that, like it or not, our audience is getting older. So I don't know about down where you are in Brazil, but up here in Southern Ontario, there's a whole, every town of about 25,000 or more has a little theater where you can run your own show if you want. So some of these places I go in and I'm trying to, you know, back in 1974, there was no real entertainment, TV, all this other stuff, telephones. So people would sit there and watch 5 guys up on stage playing music. But nowadays, people want more. They're overloaded with entertainment. So we have to kick the show up one notch and get some audio visual stuff in there for these little theaters. So that's what I'm doing with the acoustic show. The way it's going to run is we talk about the song and then it shows it on the screen. And then we maybe have a film from that time period or still photographs. So the whole thing lasts about maybe 2 minutes. And then the lights come up and we play the song. And at the end of the song, the lights go down. And then another 2 minutes of film, we talk about the next song. And then then the screen goes up, we play the next song. That's kind of the way the acoustic show goes. And it's quieter because my generation are hearing shot from playing a lot. Like we still go to outdoor concerts and things like that. At least I do. And concerts inside. But I think we're more cognitive of our hearing because we don't have too much damn hearing left. So a lot of these people go out to hear the story behind the song and to hear the song, but maybe in a quieter type of format. And to sit there and to hear the stories about the song too, the history, and to relive a little bit of that time period. I think that's big with people too, nostalgia. One thing I don't do is deny reality, and I try to look at it like, well, I look at it like a person my age would. And when I go to shows now, for instance, I don't like standing, neither does my wife. Too hard on my damn back. But I love music, so we go out, we go to wherever we're going, we go to a place that's got seating, where we're in backstage sitting and I'm watching the show, where I can get up and do whatever I want, walk around for 5 minutes if I want. That's it.
So I have heard this album, the acústico, Smash Hits Acoustic. I heard a lot of them. I love this album. It's very, very good.
It's fun playing acoustic too, and it's harder because you have to be a good musician. When we started out playing in the bars, one of the hardest things was playing at a low volume. We hated it because at a low volume, it was a lot harder to be a good player. All your mistakes come out. When you're at a loud volume, all you got to do is touch the string and you base it. But at a low volume, you actually had to pick the note and things like that. And that made us better musicians, having to play like that. Too many musicians nowadays play on level 12, and you don't really hear their mistakes because it's just a wall of sound. And they are making mistakes. You hear them in the studio. That's where you really hear them.
Yes. So we go into the last question, Brian. What are the 3 best albums of all time for you? That you heard, that you love it, that turn your head upside down, your mind. 3 albums.
That changed your life.
Well, 3 albums that changed my life were American Woman by the Guess Who, Monster by Steppenwolf, and Love It to Death by Alice Cooper. But there was a lot more too. There were Mad Dogs in English by Joe Cocker. And the funny thing was I got to meet a lot of these people. I got to tour with Alice Cooper. I loved a lot of the Motorhead stuff. Motorhead's still my favorite metal band. I knew Lemmy quite well. I did several tours with Lemmy. He was a sweetheart of a guy. But I also knew Ronnie James Dio. Some of the early dates we did in the United States were with Ronnie James Dio. And Ronnie James Dio used to come over in our dressing room before the show, and he talked to us like a real human being. And you remember things like that over the years. You don't remember when people that were pricks to you. You'd rather forget that type of deal. But he was such a nice guy, Ronnie James Dio. Another nice guy was Ian Gillan. Just invited me and Denny Bilecki, my guitar player, over and sat with us one night and told us stories about Deep Purple. I'll never forget that. Ian Gillan. To me, Ian Gillan's probably the greatest rock singer of all time.
We want to let a message to Brazil, Brian. If you said something to us, to our fans here in Brazil, if you want to say something.
Well, Brazil fans, I'd sure love to come down there. You can contact me at my email, which is bvolm0656@rogers.com, or you can go to my Facebook site or the Helix site, which is Helix the Band, and send us email. We all try to answer all our email and talk to our fans. I enjoy the after show where we still go to the merch booth. And first off, I find we sell twice as much merch, so I don't know why any musician wouldn't go out and want to sell twice as much merch. But we go out and we talk to fans, and that's part of the reason I do this. I get a charge out of that. That gets my heart pumping. And you asked before, well, how can I stay in this business? But if you're in it for the right reasons, then why would you ever quit? You're in it for the music. You're in it for the fans, truly in for the fans. And that's another thing too. If you're truly in it for the fans, then you keep making music. You keep putting it out. I don't really think about tomorrow where I'm going to come up for the money and stuff like that. I keep trying to move forward. Nowadays, one song at a time rather versus albums, just because people have them on playlists and things like that. So you try to adapt as you go along to survive. John Lennon once said that either you grow with music or music outgrows you. So we try to adapt. I have a guy now, his name's Jay Panasico, and Jay actually helped set this up today. But Jay does a lot of my social media stuff. He's very, very good at it. Studio 73. I was going to say Studio 69. No, Studio 73. And, well, you know, the funny thing about 69 was I turned 69 this year, and my guitar player, Mark Chitchkin, he had 69 on his friggin' jacket, right? And he had like 2 people going 69, right? But during the show, I was going, this year's a great year. You know, it's a momentous birthday for me. 69. It's such a big birthday that Mark was so impressed he put it on his vest of his, of his stage clothes. So, yeah. So anyway, I forget the question now.
Oh, I ask you to send a message to all your fans here in Brazil.
Well, you know, I like to go to new territories all the time. I've always thought about Brazil, going to Brazil. If we ever had the offer, we definitely go down there. But it's always a matter of money when we travel. It's not because we don't want to go there, but it's just flights alone. You're talking over $1,000 a man to get people there. Then there's wages, and you know, sometimes there's transportation. Not always, so you got to hammer out all those things. So it's quite the process to go to a strange territory. We went to Hamburg, Germany last September, and it's literally months of planning to get the flights together, the hotels, to make sure that if you're being picked up at the airport, that they're going to be there, so you don't like fly for 15 hours and show up and you're standing in an airport half asleep. Takes quite a bit of work, but if the offer's there and the money's there, then I'll go anywhere. Antarctica. Bring us to Brazil.
Bring him to Brazil.
There you go. Is that what you want to hear? Rock you.
Yes. So, Brian, thank you so much for having us in this interview. Thanks to the guys from the Studio 73 to put us together in this interview. Yes. We love your job. We are very fans of the Helix. We have the albums. We have the stuff. Listened into the newest albums that you released. For me, it's an honor having you in this interview. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome. And once again, I'd like to thank Jay Panasico from Studio 73 for putting this together. And for you, too, for having me today. And I hope you have a great evening, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
You too. Hope to see you Brazil very soon. Thank you.
You want me to say my regular goodbye? It's don't be square. See you around. Catch you on the flip side. Whoosh.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, listen, I'm going to go watch some TV. You take care. Have a nice night.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brian.
I'm going to be back at my class, so thank you also.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.